It's U of L Today on 93.9 The Ville. Here's your host, Mark Hebert.
And welcome to UofL Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville. Normally on this program we don't talk about sports too much. We talk about academics and research and students, but we're going to talk a little bit about sports here in just a minute. We'll get to that here in just a second. Well, here's what we've got coming up a little bit later. It was Autism Awareness Month last month. You'll meet a young man with autism who's a graduate of the University of Louisville. Cody Clark is a magician who's a big advocate for folks like him who have autism, and we'll be talking to Cody here in a few minutes. Also, an Egyptian student has spent a year at U of L on a Fulbright scholarship, and now she's getting ready to head back to her native country, and she has some thoughts about Louisville, Americans, and how the unrest in Egypt has her a little worried about going home. But first, if you follow sports like I do, you've heard of sports analytics, the use of research, trends, and measurements in athletics. Well, U of L is using data and performance analysis in its sports programs. Paul Jones is an exercise physiologist who's the lead performance analyst for Cardinal Athletics, and Alex Calder is a former pro soccer player who's a performance specialist now with U of L as well. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Good to have you here.
Appreciate it.
So how'd you get out of working with some athletes this morning to come hang out with me for a few minutes?
Yeah.
You told Tom Jurich you needed a hall pass or something?
That's I mean, pretty busy morning this morning. During the day, like this time of the day, a lot of the athletes have class, so we had a bit of time to duck down and get this interview in.
Yeah, and anytime we get to represent what we're doing on a grander stage, we really like to take that opportunity.
All right. So what is sports analytics? What is that? To Joe Schmo on the street, how would you describe that?
So I think the basic way to describe that is we're tracking all of the stress that we're putting on athletes, both directly and indirectly. So strength and conditioning is usually thought of just sets and reps with a barbell, but there's a whole missing piece of that. So like, how hard is practice today, and how does that need to affect tomorrow's training? That's where we come into play. We monitor practices and conditioning sessions with both GPS and heart rate monitors in order to better optimize the performance of our athletes.
And so this is really technical stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
GPS, how do you use GPS?
So a small GPS unit we mount on the back of our athletes. It sits right in between their shoulder blades, about 2 or 3 inches tall and maybe an inch wide. And so any of our outdoor field-based sports will use that in order to track how far, how fast, and how much they're moving in a match or practice.
So is it the thing that's like on my iPhone, where it tells you how many steps you walk during the day? Is it similar to that?
Yeah, where your iPhone may measure once or twice a minute, this measures over 300 times a second.
Wow.
So it's a little more powerful than your average Fitbit.
Yeah, a little bit different than my iPhone.
A bit more expensive too.
Yeah.
Okay.
A bit more expensive.
Where are you from?
Australia. Melbourne, Australia.
Australia.
Yeah.
So how in the world did you get to the United States and Louisville, Kentucky?
Yeah, long story, but I'll cut it short. I came here a long time ago to play soccer in college myself, so did my 4-year stint and then tried to get into the coaching scheme, so went through some internships, and then, Tina Murray was grateful enough to give me a job, and here I am.
There you are. That's Alex Calder, by the way. Paul Jones was the other guy talking just a minute ago, and we're talking with them about sports analytics and sports performance at the University of Louisville. What should folks know about conditioning at the University of Louisville, and how much time the athletes spend with you trying to figure out, what their bodies are doing from day to day?
Right, that's an excellent question. So what we usually see as fans of sports at the University of Louisville is just 90 minutes of a soccer match or 4 quarters of a women's basketball game. But the amount of time and preparation that's spent on that and trying to get a competitive advantage is, we compare it probably to the iceberg, right? We just see the tip of the iceberg, but really there's this huge infrastructure behind the athlete. This not only helps to peak them for game day play, but also it helps prevent or
stop injuries?
Yeah, stop injuries and assess risk of our athletes.
Okay.
So we can keep them healthier for longer and continuing to improve for the 4 years they're here at the University of Louisville.
And Alice, you played sports, right?
I did for a good 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you have anything like this, sports performance and sports analytics, tracking you as an athlete at the time?
It was the company we use, actually the GPS company is from Melbourne, from where I'm from, so the headquarters are at home. So a lot of the teams at home have been using it for a good decade or so now. And it's only starting to kind of come to light in America, especially the collegiate kind of setting in the last 4 or 5 years. So it's kind of good that we actually have a head start as opposed to a lot of other colleges as well. But yeah, when I played, we had a little bits and pieces, but not to the extent that we have here.
Do most Division I athletics programs like U of L have something similar to this, where they're tracking their athletes' performance day to day?
From what I've seen, I mean, this is only the second US college I've worked at. A lot do. How they're using it always differs. We go, because there's two of us, two heads on it, we kind of go pretty intricate with it. I'm not going to bore you, but we do dive into a lot of numbers, and there's a huge database. Even just for two of us overlooking 7 sports is still a handful.
Right. We're talking again with Alex Calder and Paul Jones from U of L Athletics Department. We're talking about sports analytics and sports performance tracking at the University of Louisville. What kind of, on the ground, give me an example of some feedback that you give coaches and athletes from day to day that might help them and might make an impact on a game or on their lives. Give me, you had a soccer athlete that was doing such and such, and we noticed that their times were going down and they had an injury. So give me something I can get my hands around.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with that. So I think like where I generally start is I like to try and quantify what the game demands are, because coaches are obviously very well aware of what the game demands are just from, practice sessions and watching games and stuff. But we just try and quantify that first, so then we can kind of see how practice looks as opposed to the game, to make sure we're not over preparing or under preparing, that we're trying to hit an ideal state when we're prepping for those game demands. So a lot of the job of what we do is education too, because we're trying to quantify the sessions and then trying to put that into terms that's understandable, I guess.
Have you ever had a situation where you said you watched the game, you said, man, we should have told Brendan McKay, don't run as much, dude. You had a bad pitching performance. Of course, he hasn't had any this year. But do you have anything like that where you guys step back and say, well, our advice probably wasn't right on that one? I think athletes are different,
There's always room to second guess. I mean, it's a high stakes game we play, and in the end, we're counting cards. No pun intended.
Yeah, I get it.
But we're just playing probability and chance of a successful outcome. So basically, I leave the outcome up to the athletes. We've prepared them up until that day. What they do on the court, the field, is a reflection of them as a person, them as an athlete, and our coaching staff.
Right. Alex, what's the future of this? What's the future of analytics and performance?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to continuously grow. There's a lot of... We've teamed up with a speed school, the engineering department, recently to try and...
You've teamed up with who?
The engineering school, speed school.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, so...
I thought you said the space school. I thought you were talking with NASA or something. What are you guys doing now?
That's where it's going.
Anyway,
no,
speed school. Okay, you teamed up with the engineering school.
Yeah, some computer science majors and PhD students about how we can use some of our retrospective data and perhaps build a predictive model. And obviously there's a lot of numbers, like I was saying, a lot of numbers to look at, and we do need more eyes on it, and we need people that understand big data and things like that to put some predictive models, because that's stuff that they learn over there, but that's not stuff that we necessarily learn as exercise science or physiologists.
Right.
So I think that's kind of where the direction's going, is more outsiders, if you will, are going to come into the sports performance world and make bigger impacts, and that's kind of where we're going to go, and that's what we kind of hope to do is collaborate with people that understand big data.
Last question. Sports management program at U of L. Do you work with any of the students coming out of that? Is that your field, or is it more physiology and those kinds of things that you work with?
The graduates that we work mainly with are from the exercise physiology department, health and sports science.
Gotcha.
But we are open to anybody that wants to come and help. Like, it's 2 of us, and we're managing the needs daily for 8 teams.
Wow.
So that's
how many athletes is that?
Oof.
Well, that's a bunch.
That's enough.
That's well over 100.
Yeah, easily over 100.
Unless you got the golf team and those kinds of things. So, all right. Well, keep up the good work, guys, and we're assuming your work is making a difference for the student athletes at the University of Louisville. Cody Clark is a U of L graduate. That is special enough, but what makes Cody different from most U of L grads is that he has autism, a neurodevelopmental disorder that usually hurts a person's ability to socially interact with other people. But as you'll hear, Cody has pretty much overcome those obstacles and is now a magician and a big advocate for others with autism. So welcome, Cody Clark.
Thank you for having me on, Mark.
I'm glad you're here. That's awesome. So you're a graduate.
Yes, I graduated in 2015 with a major in marketing and a minor in theater.
Okay, well, very good. Well, let's talk about how you got here. So let's talk about your diagnosis and how you found out you had autism and how you've lived with it through your life.
Well, I was born in 1993, and what happens with autism is for the first 15 months, everything is fine. Then the person with autism usually quits saying the words they were saying, quits being able to walk, stuff like that. So my parents were really attentive and took me to the pediatrician wondering, am I deaf? Do I have a muscle disorder? The pediatrician was like, this is actually common in autism. No, he's not deaf, but I'll refer you to the STAR program, and they'll do the extensive autism diagnosis, which was confirmed, and I was in therapy at the STAR program immediately from then on.
What's the STAR program? What is that?
The STAR program is UofL's official autism program with speech and occupational therapy, some of the leading autism research in the country. And I had two really good therapists there named Rose Geis and Scott Tomchek who really helped me along and did some very innovative therapies that were so fun I didn't even realize they were therapy.
So it was a good time you're going through therapy, huh?
Yeah, a better time than you'd think.
Yeah, okay. And when did you start that? When did you start in the STAR program? How old were you?
Well, I don't remember not being at the STAR program.
So you were really young.
Yeah, pretty much immediately after they diagnosed me, they placed me in the therapy programs.
Okay.
And then set up with the Crusade for Children ways to help my parents fund the therapy.
Right, gotcha. So, so you're now a graduate of the University of Louisville. So I guess the question, obviously, is how did you overcome these obstacles with social interaction and those kinds of things to get to the point where you could go to high school and get good grades and go to U of L and graduate? How'd you get there?
Well, early on, most of the therapy revolved around puppet play, since puppets are stand-ins for other people to socially interact with. And that's probably what led to my desire to be in theater and magic, which I had teachers at Trundle Elementary that took me to plays all the time. So I found through theater that was a good way to practice social interactions, since you have a script, there are certain expectations, and people to correct you if you get something wrong.
Okay, so that helped your social interaction. Did your autism impact your ability to learn to sit in a classroom and to learn from a teacher? Did you need any special classes, those kinds of things?
Well, I was mainstream, but I did have a special needs teacher there who would pull me out to get longer time on test, or if there was a concept I really wasn't getting, which for me, in spite of the stereotypes that we're all good at math, I suck at math.
What are you good at?
I'm very good at the English subjects, like English, of course, storytelling, theater, dramatic arts.
Okay. And when we talk about autism, people hear the term on the autism scale. I would say you're on the not severely impacted by autism. That you're at that
I'd
end of
be
the
more
scale.
toward what's called Asperger's, but the self-advocates like me are advocating for it to be a star, since instead of being on a line, some of us are really skilled in one area, but we absolutely suck in another area.
Right.
Like, I can be really good at writing stories, but my motor skills can still be an issue.
Okay.
Like, my handwriting is very bad. Took me longer to tie my shoes, to learn how to drive a car, which thankfully I know how to drive a car now.
Well, we're glad you do too. So we're not have a danger on the roadways, right?
Right. I still work with my parents, though.
Okay. Yeah, Cody Clark, again, is our guest. He's a U of L graduate, and he has autism. And April was Autism Month in the state of Kentucky, Autism Awareness Month in the state of Kentucky. So that's why we're talking with Cody a little bit. So you graduate, so you get through U of L. Did you need anything special from the University of Louisville while you were going through your undergrad program?
Well, very occasionally I would take tests at the DRC.
What's the DRC?
It's the Disabilities Resource Center, that you can tell them you have a disability, which that's the big difference between JCPS and college is in college you have to go to them. They won't automatically find you if you need disability services.
Right.
And then generally you only take disability services for the classes you really struggle with, like math, and then my capstone class at the College of Business down the street.
Right. So as a student with disability, how did you find U of L? Were there holes in perhaps the services we could offer you? Were there things that U of L did really well? How would you characterize that?
Well, the people at the DRC weren't really particularly nice, but the teachers as a whole, like at the business school and the theater department, were very understanding.
Okay.
The problem I sometimes find with accessing disability services is that I get discriminated by the disabilities teacher since they know I have a disability. So without really knowing me other than coming in for tests, they
Right.
assume I'm wrong when I come to them with a complaint.
Right. So they didn't treat you as a person who has normal function, in other words.
Yeah,
correct?
they didn't really treat me as a person. They just
gotcha.
saw the disability.
I got you, but you got through.
Yeah, but I got through, especially because of my teachers being so understanding.
Well, that's good to hear. All right, so you got your degree, and now you're doing what? Tell folks what you're doing now.
I'm a professional magician, and I'm touring with my show, Cody Clark, A Different Way of Thinking, at small theaters and what's called fringe festivals. Fringe festivals are small, independent theater that can be self-produced, and since there's shows going on all day, you have to be able to set up in only 10 minutes.
Okay.
And it started in Edinburgh, Scotland, because their version of the Humana Festival, they didn't let in a certain amount of acts, so they started a festival on the outside, which their fringe is now bigger than the Edinburgh Theatre Festival. And now it's come to Canada and then, fortunately, to America, where I've done fringe festivals in Cincinnati, Indianapolis, the next month, Orlando.
All right. So when you were a magician, do you kind of crack jokes, too, about your autism, or do people even have any idea that you're autistic?
Well, with that show, they do because it's an autism advocacy show.
So you're using that to advocate.
Yes. Then I have other shows like my kid show, Conductor Cody, where I don't really mention my autism except in marketing since lots of kids with autism love trains.
Right.
Then when I do weddings and banquets because those people are just there to have a good time, not to learn anything.
I got you. You're also working with a group called FEAT and with the Autism Training Center at UofL to get more businesses aware
Yes.
of how they should react when they have an autistic child or an autistic adult come into their business. So what's that about?
Well, me being a College of Business graduate, I have big faith in the ability of business to enact social change. So I came to them about making sure local businesses can be more autism friendly, and they fortunately had similar ideas too. And what the system is, there's 3 different levels businesses can apply for. First is Autism Aware, where they watch a 10-minute training video by yours truly. I'm starring in it as an autistic actor to show them what might happen with autistic customers and how to avoid major conflicts.
How they might act up, like
Yeah.
how a customer might act up in the
And
restaurant
how the
or
employee
store,
should
how they
treat
should
them
react,
instead
right.
of just straight up kicking them out.
Well, let's hope not.
That's Autism Aware.
Okay.
Then there's Sensory Friendly, which is level 2, where you dim the lights, you provide STEM toys, things to make sure that our senses aren't overwhelmed. Since that's not really much of a problem with me, but it is for people that are on different scales of the spectrum, the
Severe.
sensory issues.
Right.
Then the highest level is hiring employees with autism. Since the unemployment rate for autism is over 50%, I don't know the exact number, but it's way higher than it should be.
Right.
So to be the highest level of Autism Aware, you have to commit to hiring employees with autism.
So what would you tell folks listening to this program about people like you that have autism? What's your key message to Joe Schmo on the street about people with autism?
That we are just as human as you are, that we may have our challenges, but we do have our unique abilities too, and we should be incorporated into society rather than shunned away.
Very good. Well, Cody Clark, you are a great representative of people with autism and a great representative for the University of Louisville. So glad you came on the program.
I'm glad to be here, and I wouldn't be here without U of L, without my degree from U of L, and I've been surprised at how much it has helped me.
Very good. I guess we should let you make a pitch for your magic show. So how can folks get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you and have your magic show come to their program or their place of worship?
Well, my website is codyclarkmagic.com for my main show. That's where you can find information about Different Way of Thinking and my wedding and banquet show. Then if you want my kids show, that's conductorcody.com.
Conductorcody.com. That's good. Good stuff. All right. Cody Clark, again, thanks for being on the program. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.
All right. Good deal. All right. When we come back, we'll talk to an Egyptian student about turmoil in her home country and her past several months in Louisville at U of L. You're listening to U of L Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville. Nariman Mustafa has been in the United States for almost a year now. She is a Fulbright scholar from Egypt, and she has been studying at the University of Louisville for the past several months, and she's with us now to talk about her experience because she's getting ready to head home. Well, welcome back, Nariman. Good to see you again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Well, tell us about the Fulbright scholarship. You're from Egypt originally,
Yeah.
and tell us about the Fulbright. What was that, and why'd you come to University of Louisville?
Oh, the Fulbright, they have different programs. So they also give scholarship to PhDs and master's degree. The kind of scholarship that I'm on, it's like you get enrolled as a student. You either get enrolled as undergraduate or graduate. In my case, it was graduate because I have an MA in journalism, and I also get to teach Arabic. And they sort of like big, like people from different countries in the Middle East, Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia. We also have people from Lebanon and Jordan and Palestine. So it's from all over to get to teach, people and the students in the U.S. the Arabic language with different dialects.
Okay, where are you from in Egypt?
I'm from the main city, Cairo.
So from that, and that's the largest city in Egypt, as we know, I think. And so, what was your life like in Egypt, and how do you compare that to life in Louisville, Kentucky? I know that's a big question, but let's give it a shot here.
Well,
How's it different?
it's a lot different. Well, Cairo is crowded. It's almost
Yeah.
like New York, only New York is a little
It's
more
a big,
crowded.
big city,
Yeah.
yeah.
But the thing is, in terms of the availability of things, I'll pick a small example like supermarkets here. This sort of a variety of products, we don't have that in Egypt. Like you have different flavors of, I don't know, Coca-Cola or
Gatorade, you got 50 different flavors or whatever, things like that.
Yeah. In Egypt, it's either this or that. I mean, a funny example, I was walking into Kruger's and I found this Pepsi, and it's like, it has no color. And I called my mother, and I told her that, hey,
Pepsi has no color?
yeah. And we didn't find that in Egypt. And I was talking to my friend the other day also. I told her that living here is easy in terms of, the household products. Like when your mother runs into something that's basically easy, you have a solution here. But in Egypt, it's like, oh, we have to do it with our hands. It's just the way it is. So you make the household life a lot more easier here in the U.S.
Well, we've heard about in terms of social things going on in Egypt and political things going on in Egypt versus the United States. We heard about the attack on the Coptic Christians on Palm Sunday and those kinds of things. When you look at Egypt, and we've talked about this before, Egypt versus the United States in terms of tolerance, religious freedom, those kinds of things. What do you see, and what would you tell Americans about how we see things?
You mean in terms of the relationship between Christians and Muslims in Egypt?
Well, that, and also, the freedoms of, we always say, we're this mantle of freedom here, and we're tolerant in the United States. It's a melting pot, all that thing. Is it really in the United States from your point of view, or is it not compared to what you have?
I think prior to the 9/11 incident, things were a lot more tolerant. But then you get major events that keeps escalating. So if someone has like this understanding of Islam and he's acting upon it, I would actually understand that, because the way that the ISIS is doing it, it gives you like
it gives Islam a bad name.
Yeah,
what ISIS does, just like
And the thing is also some broadcasting services call it Daesh, and the other one calls it the Islamic State. So once you label it as Islamic State, there you go. But it's not really Islam. It's like the Crusades in the history. So
Right.
they take the form of like when the Crusade, they were the label of the Crusades with the cross, and they murdered people in the name of the cross. So
Right.
it's really
Same
it's really
thing.
about how people interpret religion itself.
We're talking with Nariman Mustafa she's from Egypt, and she's been in the United States since last, May? When did you come last year?
I came in August
August,
and came here in September.
Okay, so you've been here 7 months or so, something like that, and she's getting ready to go back to Egypt, but she's been studying at the University of Louisville. Are you worried about going back to Egypt? There's been some upheaval in Egypt. Are you worried about going back home?
In a way, yes.
Are you really?
It's just not that. It's how the state of emergency works in Egypt, and the president issues state of emergency all across the country because of that. And it's just not a very good thing to live in a country that's in a state of emergency, especially Ramadan is coming up, and people would like to feel like they're free and you know,
Right.
you know how it is in a state of emergency in the Middle East or countries like that.
And you're a journalist, or you want to be a journalist, I guess. So when you go back home, is that going to be hard to be a journalist? Coming from the United States, where journalists can pretty much write anything and are protected and valued, to a country, does Egypt value journalism and value the truth?
I would love to answer that. I'm just thinking about because there is no right way of answering this. The situation now in Egypt, everyone wants to have a good life. The simple forms of life is getting to have a basic needs, and with the economy, not everyone is getting to have to do that. And in Egypt, you have to either write, like for public newspaper, or you have your own private newspaper. And it's just not easy. Working for a private newspaper doesn't mean that you have the whole liberty to tell everything. And working for the national newspaper, no journalist wants to be dictated to tell
what to do, and that you have to go along with what the government wants you to say.
Yeah,
I get you. All right, well, what else would you say? We need to wrap this up here pretty quick, but what else would you say about your experience here in America, and what would you tell folks in Louisville about your experiences as you're walking out the door and headed back to your country? You liked it? Didn't like it? Wish you didn't do it? Glad you did it? You tell me.
I would tell them to appreciate being here, because you don't know what the other side looks like. That's it.
Good advice. Good advice. Appreciate that you're an American and what you've got in America. That's what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Now, Imam Mustafa, always good to see you, and maybe we'll see you before you head back to Egypt.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for being on the show.